Hello, welcome. Mark my words. Remember when I said that come the Lunar New Year is when we would actually see the differences of this year and everything that will change. And I feel like in many instances since that has happened, since the Lunar New Year has come upon us, everybody in some way has seen their worlds change in some wild, large way, be it, jobs or breakups or what have you. There's been a death officially to the previous year, and in, for many of us, far too literally. But so I don't feel bad about missing the last one. The last full moon, it was a very potent one, because we adjusted to precisely what I had kind of spoke about before. So happy Lunar New Year, happy many celebrations for it in the past few weeks. Happy, but here we are now, happy happy new moon, officially new for, the official new times, new this, new that, new all kinds of things. A happy new moon in Pisces, new moon being a dark moon and kind of occluded in some way, in very literal ways, because half of it is unseen to us, but in the way that it's kind of lined out and the way that new moons tend to fall with the sun, it falls very in line, so it feels like it's kind of like very much in its own right a sort of eclipse, although not traditionally, but many changes. The moon and the sun are also in line with Neptune and Saturn, and I think that Neptune, obviously being in Pisces with all of this, lends itself to many things, lends itself very much to our dreams, very much to hidden desires, hidden thoughts. A lot of times that will bring up re-healing or deeper healing of things as well. But I think with Saturn moving out of Aquarius and into all of those functions as well with them, I think that has a lot to do with the way that our dreams are influenced by our patterns or patterning in general. There is very much a scientific thought to how much our brain takes in and how much of that excess of what we don't necessarily process in waking life is what comes up in our dreams, and what we sort of feed to those ideas, or what we feed to those explorations, I suppose, even. Further along, Mars is still in Gemini, but I feel like as Mercury continues to move through, we'll move out of an air sign and into a water sign, and we'll get another very clear line of communication between all of these planets, and I think that will lend itself in that communication to a clarity and a change of actionable mind, and a clarity in the planning of those steps. More permeable action. And if you watch the fucking other one I did bring that up as well, is how we'll have to kind of replan any sort of new ideas that we had about the year. And that's what this time frame up until now has been, is sort of the challenges so that we can recenter and reorient and sort of rearrange any cogs in the machine to repattern things as we move forward. I think as Mercury moves into that, given all the energy that's happening in Pisces with the moon now, will absolutely lend itself to a more sturdy or more strong perspective on, you know, whatever it is that has resonated with this, be it, you know, sense of self, sense of stability in your job, sense of stability in relationships, or what have you, sense of stability in whatever growth it is that you want, because that can also, and healing can also be feel very chaotic, and feel very to and fro and back and forth. Let's see. I think that will also, well, Jupiter and Venus will come together at some point, and I think all of this will also lend itself to Venusian ideas versus the strict terms of conditioning that I think Ceres and Mars themselves are instigating with the Earth and the Moon right now. Us being the Earth and the Moon right now. And, you know, Ceres being a very a different version of sort of, you know, Mars-like energies. It's still very warrior-like. I don't think it lacks softness, but that isn't its priority. And it tends to be more disruptive. So those things, both of those things coming together, rather than it be those strict terms on either side of each are kind of like unforgiving angels or demons, and sort, you know, the angels and demons on our shoulders. They both are one and the same, and they both are ideas and perspectives of ourself. And, you know, one of those selves is a little bit more nurturing, one of those selves is maybe a little bit harder on ourselves. And those commentaries are, I think, what's sitting on the shoulders of you know, everyone in the collective and what have you, that's sort of fabricating dichotomy or fabricating choice. And when Venus meets Jupiter and when Mercury meets Mars, again, that clarity will come to fruition. And all of the things that we're setting up now will lend itself to alleviate those strict and compressing and conditional ideas and sentiments, and I think lend itself to maybe a more forgiving mindset, more fluid mindset, or more adaptable mindset, I suppose, which sounds contrary to the idea of stability. However, it's that fluidity that allows for that solidification later on, I suppose. Like you know, those like jelly-like substances that if you like hit it, it's more firm. That's kind of what I'm thinking of. Let's see, what does this look like? Well, okay, so there's a lot. I tend to just kind of focus on the lights and like where momentum leads, and there's almost like a lot of like as if you're like sort of massaging out. There's a lot of like whipping energy, more toward the way of Uranus and Jupiter, which again will probably pull that weight from Venus into it as well. And I think that will lend itself to, like I said, feeding all of these ideas, both to the collective, but also to ourselves and our collective thought. That in and of itself does feed collective consciousness. And that fluidity of understanding will help to build more stability, be that in communication, relationships, relatability, which in the grand scheme of things is also community, and is also a sense of, rather than seeking to be understood, seeking understanding. And I think those can be very difficult to define concepts, but you know, that's what's up with Pisces, in the depths of the water, my friends. But yeah, so I guess we're working towards stability to some degree. But with that being said, we're going to pull some cards, and I'm feeling experimental in this grand scheme of new. And I'm going to use a new deck that was gifted to me by one of my very best friends. Oh. By one of my very best friends. And I'm gonna see what happens. That's gonna try not to drop everything. That's what we're also going to do. Maybe it's less stability and more presence. Because, you know, the stars don't necessarily move, but when the moon is dark like this, we can see things a little bit more, or a little bit more clearly. And I was reading something about a trifecta of stars that were more visible during this time. And it's funny because you can kind of, you find out, you can find a place by like triangulating the locations or whatever. That's what they do with satellites. And I think maybe rather than what we're looking for, it's looking for self. And with all of the changes and everything that has happened, that can feel much more distant than it is present. And sometimes that's all we need. Maybe that's the ultimate definition of stability, I suppose. Yes. Okay. For old time's sake, and continuity, I suppose. We'll take 3 deep breaths together. Just tap into whatever the heck is going on in this sky. So much like we were hanging out together and like we were sitting across from each other and there are cards in between us. Sit as comfortably as you like and make yourself available for the energy that passes through this. We're going to take 3 deep breaths together. Take a deep breath, big deep inhale. I don't know why that was so hard to say. And on the exhale, imagine a shadow card rising into your openness, however that may be. All right, take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Okay. There's a lot of air energy. There's a lot of thought energy. I feel inflated. Which also, if you have like a sinus headache, like you'll feel it a lot here, and like sometimes here. Or like when I've gotten air bubbles in my skin, they'll travel up to there and it can get really uncomfortable. And that's exactly what I'm feeling now. Almost again, like this disconnect. In parts of my neck, which is part of presence, part of focus, part of what it is that you're seeing, what it is you're focusing on, where it is your attention is. And that is a big part of parenting. And thoughts, air energy, dreams, disconnect. Ugh. These are beautiful. Okay. A lot of these came out inverted, so we're gonna roll with it. We're gonna roll with it. Six of Cups, Eight of Cups, Page of Cups, Knight of Swords. It's a lot of water energy. So we're in a lot of air right now. Things are moving out of Aquarius. Aquarius season is almost over. That is the signature of this new moon. Any thoughts that weren't dealt with, any doubts that weren't dealt with, any situations, any maneuvering that had to be dealt with in this thought process that wasn't, becomes a very heavy wave of actionable desire. And that can be overstimulating, overwhelming, can be really intense, all of these things. But that's not to say that that time period is over. That is to say that now we can't hide from those things. Now there is no way to pretend that you didn't feel the wind, because the water is going to slap you in the face. Because I could say that nicer. But the Page of Cups comes out on top of this. And this is this beautiful character. Gosh, look at the back of this too. It feels like circus tent. Ooh, I'm pretty sure there's something about the year of the white rabbit. I don't know. I'll look into that. Actually, a friend of mine will probably have some info on that. But there's grace here, there's poise here, there is a strong and pointed shadow. And it's almost like she's been awarded this cup rather than it being something that she's had. So there's pride here, where often we sort of turn away from our water and our emotions, right? So she's like rocking this as if it was, you know, a trophy. There's an element of listening to yourself, listening to all of those. I mean, all of the emotions, or all of the thoughts that come in aren't necessarily emotions. They're like looking for places to be. So if you can tune into what it is that your body's actually saying, or what it is that your mind is trying to say, you can kind of be your own Mythbusters and like debunk those things, or sift through them in a way where you only get the tangible and the things that you can really identify, and then you see through kind of all of the thinness of you know, the realities of these doubts. They're not necessarily as palpable, and they're not necessarily as weighted as we would think, if we take the time to do that and ultimately listen. And that is, again, you know, do we listen when the wind calls? Do we listen when the wind is trying to tell us things? You know, do we notice those kinds of messages? And again, if we did not before, this is a time period of not being able to hide from that and not being able to ignore that. If anything, to honor it with pride. And sometimes, rather than fight back or argue or disagree, we can learn a lot more and move a lot farther if we accept things humbly and with awareness. You know, so rather than be on the defense, be at peace, I guess. Be understanding, I suppose, of fallibility, of misunderstanding, of the ebb and flows of the information that we need to move forward in any given time. But there's there's a cleanliness and a clarity that comes with that is not stained in thought. Six of Cups, the Eight of Cups. Ooh, interesting. Okay. Oh, and he's dining with white rabbits. In between lights, in between ghosts, in between. Again, we're listening. Again, perhaps we're being our own listener. Perhaps we're telling stories to ourselves. And even the stories that are just to ourselves are stories that impact those around us. It creates interest, and it does feed the whatever it is around us, the energy or what have you. You know, don't talk shit to your plants. Just like you shouldn't talk shit to yourself. And I think that when we recognize the momentum that we can conjure with those things, and essentially, what you wouldn't serve to others, don't serve to yourself. And if you would serve it to yourself, understand and give love in that momentum. It is very much sort of this round table of desire, of thought to desire, and of offering. I think it can be. This was inverted, so maybe it feels like nobody's listening to you, like nobody is taking part in these offerings. That the earth, the air, and the water, spirit, are disconnected from the will and the desire or fire, motivation, or what have you. Which is heart desire, is what leads you to spirit. So focus on those two things. Those two things are the bridges to that gap that will allow you to hear yourself clearly and you to speak your truth clearly, if that makes sense. Will is also fueled by memory. And again, when we're moving out of all of these, airy sign things and moving out of Aquarius season, how is it that memory has fueled your current understanding of things? How is it that your memory has created a cycle of where your intention lies and how you move towards that intention? And if intention doesn't work for you, like where your passion lies and how you move toward that passion, where your desire lies and how you move toward that desire, where your creativity lies and how you move toward that creativity, where your love lies and how you move toward that, or with or in that love. And that goes for all of those things. Those are two major points that are missing in this, and will connect all of that information from this point where basing memory off an earthly law, like a tangible earthly example of law, or like a solid stability. That this is exactly what I was talking about with that strict terms of agreement, like conditional understanding and acceptance of the self. That is what feeding memory and will off of earth laws, off of man-made laws, off of given laws, etc., etc. Which is also why people are so desperate for religion, and why we're seeing religious Super Bowl commercials, among that and many other places, and such a spike in spirituality and spiritual readers, often peddling love readings, to continue that root in a man-made desire, in a sort of not cosmically constructed variation or version of desire. Decolonization of Eros, my friends. That is a interesting, potent card. There's an element of reflective thought, and the way that it stands, again, there's a sort of a box in, like a glass ceiling, when there could be vastness instead. Again, those strict terms, that constriction, that the conditional agreements that we have with ourselves are a confine. more than a growth. And if we stay in that pattern, we'll find, I mean, nobody stays the same. Not like, well, what is it? You never stay the same, you get better or you get worse, or something like that. I mean, it's not true. That was something I heard in sports. But, take it or leave it. It's not that, nothing will change and we'll stay the same forever. But it is that we can continue this cycle, or we can divert from this cycle and create new cycles or new ideas. Do you want to roam in this tiny room, or do you want to have a open playing field to explore in this new version of life and new version of year and new version of world and new version of what it means to be alive and what it means to maintenance the self and what it means to love or grow, I suppose. Jupiter is in Aries with Chiron. Venus is moving into Aries, and I think that's also why this is saying to feed your fire, feed your will, feed your desire, feed your creativity, feed your love, feed your heart. That has been clearer than anything. Feed your intuition by feeding your heart. And find comfort and protection in that. Illumination, guidance even. And that has a lot to do with how we nurture and nourish ourselves and the way it is that we view that. I know I've touched on this before, but it's a very prominent Western thing. Rather than focus on the ideas of diet culture, think more about the whys and the hows of what it is that we do. Because you can eat a salad and hate yourself for it, and your body will digest that stress. Or poorly digest that stress. And you can eat cupcakes and love yourself for it, and your body will digest that lack of stress. So the ways in which we feed our desire, the whys in the hows, which, you know what, if you're not sure what the hell I mean by that, think of the ways that you reward yourself or treat yourself, and think of why that is a treat or why that is a reward. I think one of the first things that I learned doing that was how often I reward myself with alcohol, and that very quickly evolves into a less celebratory celebration, and then it also becomes how you punish yourself, or can be, and that's the slippery slope with anything. That's exactly why smartphones can be so handy and we're so reliant on them, but we also find ourselves doom scrolling, or whatever they call it now. And when you figure out the whys and the hows and what it is you're actually looking to find or connect, then you stop looking at the what that it is, and you catch yourself sort of in that process, which is exactly that like I said before, moving out of Aquarius season and into Pisces, or the moon moving out of Aquarius and into Pisces, the sun moving out of Aquarius and into Pisces, is maybe giving us a longer gap of time to really finesse that and breaking it down in that same way. And again, rather than focusing on the what, we're focusing on the whys and the hows in that sort of precursor of time. And when you're more aligned with what your heart wants and how your head is reacting to that, or what your intuition tells you how your heart feels about it, and how your mind will process that through your body, you'll find that that in and of itself creates a momentous stability that minimizes room for doubt. It sort of shrinks that opportunity for it. And that's maybe ultimately what we're trying to do, but rather than in movement or dance or what have you, we're trying to do that in our mind. 8 of Cups is, oh, interesting, figure walking up a, okay. Given everything that we've said about this Six of Cups and everything that we've said about conjuring with your will, with your fire, with your creativity, with your love, with your desire, is one and of its own. Do not let that feed your ego. You will find yourself sorely disappointed. There is also still always a project, and always like that is like if that's always circulating, you can't like walk away from it. You can't just ignore it. Like we're always kind of maintaining it, and you always kind of have to direct that, and you always kind of have to be mindful of that. So there's this figure walking up the stairs. I'm like, this is the conjuring. This is the new idea. This is the momentum. This is the direction, right? And I have this black cloak figure walking up these stairs. There's, many a story about, ascension to heaven, Jacob's ladder, all of these various ways of describing this sort of journey to the self, or journey inwards, or journey beyond the self even. That comes with time, and that comes with slow but steady steps. And I think also comes as a reminder that there is no plateauing. And even if we feel that, because there's, technically no beginning or no ending, there's no, clear definition of a destination or what have you, we just know that this is moving. And we can get stuck or blinded by the idea that this is nowhere or going nowhere, and fail to recognize the process of the journey and the attention that each movement, each step forward needs. Because things can also shift at any given time. The destination on this, again, is unknown. However, there is a flow, there is a way, there is also a grace. So we travel with grace, but we also understand the weight of things. And again, if that wind picks up and it catches that cloak, we would feel the weight of the things that we're carrying. Do we allow it to tear us down? Like, do we allow it to work as momentum against us, or do we allow it to, I don't know, make us look like a badass ascending this fucking staircase? I think it's a lot more about internal balance and creating that, rather than it is about actionable. That doing too much at once can kind of throw us off, right? If you were to tightrope walk and you were all out here with it, that would throw off your balance. But if you were here with it, that would be able to allow you to sort of gracefully move up. I think the way that the wind catches this also is also a reminder of, especially going back to what I said about all of this leading itself to collective energies or collective thoughts or what have you. I want to reiterate that even thinking this for yourself, creating that pattern in your mind, also feeds that to collective consciousness. Far too often we think we have to go to reach back in order to uplift. And that is, I'm sure I've said this before, but it's like reaching into oil. It becomes a sticky substance that pulls you back down. It's not about pushing to elevate, to get your friends to meditate or whatever, to elevate their frequencies. It is about just becoming that and naturally becoming the next level to rise to. It's very much a leading by example kind of way of going about it. And I think perhaps we're very conscious of that weight. Perhaps we feel very guilty with that weight. Perhaps we are far too aware of how much that is holding us back, or how much that is, adding to us. I mean, shit, honestly, now that I'm saying that, like, I do very well to deal, man, but your body still holds on to so much, and it can feel so heavy. And so sore but atrophied, which is such an interesting, like, ironic occurrence. And this is moving out of that. This is moving out of that feeling, but it does take effort, and it takes patience, and it takes all of those things for the sake of those things rather than for the sake of being done or being better. And in my own most honest way of saying that is, it's not necessarily to make those feelings go away, but it is to make peace with them, to make them less painful. And that can go for a lot of things. On one hand, when we learn about ourselves and the way that we react to depressive times and our own manic or depressive episodes, we learn about those things, and we learn to heal those things, not because we're cured, but because now we have the tools needed and necessary to confront those things. And we collect and we build more tools so that it's sort of like, I have this whole arsenal that this thing is no longer has that power. However, in a slightly different but very parallel context, in feelings like grief, as much as we may want that to go away, just that feeling going away takes a lot with it. And so it's not that we want to rid ourselves of having loved or to have never loved at all, but it is to understand and comfort the idea of this weight so as that it uplifts and elevates itself, and becomes more of a comfort in itself as an act of living perpetually than it does just about grief. But do you see what I mean about how it's not necessarily about expelling it, but it is about understanding it? So rather than an exorcism, it's more like I don't know, you're not trapping it necessarily either, but you do allow it some space to, you allow it the space it needs to exist. And that is maybe a way that we can confront many uncomfortable things, both in ourselves, but especially outside of ourselves. And that takes us to this Page of Cups, who is like super ready to confront things in her wonderful, graceful, elegant glow. And also finds great stability, and also has a very, she's obviously got a great posture to her. Obviously was a ballerina, so we know that she can be nimble and balanced and all of these things. And what she's presenting right now is very structured. What she's presenting right now is the display of where that balance comes from. And that is her pride in this cup, this character. And what your pride can be, having reconciled with this, current Eight of Cups step into, and this inverted Six of Cups constriction and stricter terms of endearment to the self. Oh man, okay. Knight of Swords is the bottom of the deck, which is a beautiful card. Is still always one of my favorite cards, and that is absolutely gorgeous. And a griffin, I'm assuming, which isn't just to be wonderful and fantastical, but all of those animals are ideas of consciousnesses like all of these representations of, you know, like this demon had the head of a man and the body of a this and the feet of a this and da 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 da. It's ideas of consciousness and what is exuded, sort of personified. You know, the same way that we personify spiritual qualities onto animals, in the same way that we've used those symbols to create totems or iconography in whatever way. That is the vehicle. That whatever iconography or archetypal lore or story or what have you that resonates or that leads you, again with the Eight of Cups, is the vehicle that we're riding. Griffin can fly, is fucking talons, got a fucking beak, got a fucking, I mean, I don't actually know if that's a full ass griffin. I should see. But you have flight, you have land, you have an open sky, you have a dark sky. Ooh, I'm pretty sure they have a feather in my hair. The Nine of Swords, in general, is about an uprightness and a sturdiness to your own posturing of self. It's the things that hold our shoulders up and back. It's the things that keep us looking forward, ahead, up. It's the smoothest path of energy traveled. It's, you know, all of these things that invigorate the mind, the spirit, etc. Like, I'm sure there's people who are like, you just stand like this and you build confidence. But that also has a lot more to do with the way your body is circulating blood and oxygen and all of these things, just in paths, again, more easily followed. The Nine of Swords is about that kind of stature, but also the attitude that comes with it, because the Knight of Swords does not question what he knows or the skills that he has. He knows that he has the skills to fight freaking anything, do freaking anything. It's very much like a full self-knowing. And I think that is perfect, actually. I think that's perfect with this dark sky, because not that we're going through another dark night of the soul, but the world is a dark place. And this is a new world, and it has only gotten darker. It has only gotten darker, and the shadows that I've seen years ago, I only see more of, and only meet more people that see that as well. And I think this is a luminous figure to be caught in a very dark world, and that's such a brilliant and beautiful confidence and unshakable will in the face of the unknown, which is where this character could channel, like could bring this kind of energy rather than this kind of doubtful energy, which is why it's at the bottom of the deck. Let it feed the whole vibe, right? There are stars. They're off in the distance, and you know what's funny looking at this now is the Page of Cups. It's kind of like it's like the inverse coloring. Like if you were to take this image and I don't know what the fucking photo settings are, which is interesting because the Page of Cups maybe is the star for one. She's getting a trophy. She's on a stage. Da 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 da. She's elevated. It looks like with the stars. And doesn't need to see stars there in order to know that they're there. But that's, I think, maybe why they're inverted for us here, is the stars that this character can't see and that are kind of hidden in the fog are also all around her, in an inverted way. And when you understand that, you can begin to see things clearer. You know, not everything is what it seems. Not everything is what it's told us to be. Told us it is. Told us what we're told it is to be. Not everything is what we're told it is to be. And I think even though it doesn't look like it at first, like there's, again, a clarity there, there's knowing, there's an assurance, and that is an assurance that also lends itself to this character. And I think that in another time, perhaps this character had been this character, or had to go through all of this to learn how to be that character in order to be able to make this fight. So it's funny, we're leaving air, we're going into all of this water, only to find more clear air, truly. And that's not to say that that will be the, immediate bam, 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 but that is ultimately, I think, where things will move and where things will go. There's a shadow. There's a shadow that's not these characters. There's a shadow behind them, but there's a shadow in front of them that is not those characters. And that is being a light in a very dark world. Being a light in the face of fighting a dark world. Fighting shadows. And it's not that we are fighting shadows, but it is that when we open ourselves to, when we tune ourselves to be able to see those things, then we learn to understand a little bit more deeply on what I'm thinking now is in the same way that, mediums can attune themselves to be able to tap into certain things. That in and of itself becomes a sort of counteraction to that. They tap into those things with the intention to understand, so that they can alleviate that lack of clarity, fogginess, distortion, obfuscation, etc. Not to exercise it, but to alleviate it, to sort of disperse it, in the same way that we disperse other energies, the same way we can kind of break down cramping or clotting or bruising, and allow that to alleviate itself in dispersing or spreading. The shadow in and of itself is also bigger than the figures, and I think that's in a very, have faith that you are also larger than life kind of way. Life is precious, and remember that you are, especially, again, in those strange opportunities for doubt and second guessing, because that can distort any momentum. I think the Knight of Swords also has a humbleness to them, in the context of that they are aware of how to fight, but don't necessarily need to. And this character in specific, I think, is in this more for the sense of adventure, which is, again, I think, a reminder to focus on the process rather than the product, and to focus on the journey rather than the destination. But process rather than product. Ultimately, in my theory, if you focus on product over process, you can find yourself in realms of disingenuousness, which, in a musical context is what people would call a sellout. Although I don't necessarily believe, I don't think I believe in that, in the idea of a sellout. But, still, slippery slope. Don't want to sell yourself out. Especially so early on. Because we've got some shit ahead of us. Okay, I like that. Oof. All right. Same deal, same vibe. 3 deep breaths together, as if there's cards in between us. Take a deep breath in. On the exhale, pay attention to anything you might feel, and make your body available to it, I suppose. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Interesting. I feel like energy that I had felt maybe more outside of here is a lot more centered. And that makes my limbs feel very light. Like no pressure, you know, like weight is lifted off, like they're more able to float and move, I suppose. That was interesting, because that also kind of made me feel like tingly, you know, like when you hit your funny bone, like you kind of like fucking go numb, and then all of this tickles. It's very much like that. So opposing ideas, opposing ideologies, maybe that's internal conflict, internal battle, but that also is very much like the world around us, and how conflicting it can be when neither side is a side that you see. False dichotomies, for sure. And we tend to give ourselves those as well, like, you know, am I a bad person, am I a good person because of this one thing? False dichotomy. Good people do bad things and bad people do good things. And everybody changes and everybody grows, you know, is that if a good person does a bad thing and could be deemed a sellout, if a bad person does a good thing, are they also a sellout? That's stupid. Nothing is that simple. But we have the King and the Queen of Diamonds, so it is essentially within the same plane, but opposing ideas, opposing forces, opposing dichotomous irony, nonsense. And that is, I think, what's being needed versus what's being given, what's being asked for versus what's being given. But needed versus what is given is a big thing here. Which I also like really need to tie back to not the what, but the whys and the hows. So is that something that can be applied to here as, you know, this is what I need, this is what I want, but this is not what I'm getting. Well, let's reevaluate the what and the whys, and, you know, is it just this what, or, you know, what are the whys and the hows that come to this? My first example, or my first thought is like, if you were to say, you know, I want to, like, I need, you know, this job with this many figures. Okay, cool, but you're upset with yourself, feeling down, feeling like a failure because you're not getting that. Cool, let's go back to the drawing board. You know, rather than the what, it being this job specifically, or it being these figures specifically, how else can we creatively imagine the whys and the hows of that? What is it that feels like? Is that because you're looking for more, you know, financial freedom, because you're looking for more vacation time, because you're looking for more time off, because you're looking for, you know, more laissez-faire, or less responsibility, or less scheduling, or less desk time, or more like walking around time, or, you know, you want to see the sun more, or you want to not have to worry about getting up early. All of those things are the whys and the hows. And that's where you start to really hone in on this idea of what it is that the what is that is wanted or needed. And that ultimately reconciles It clearly communicates and clarifies and defogs and deobfuscates the impediments or the blockages for that idea. So that delivery exchange can be more in line, because while these two cards are on the same plane, they are not aware of each other. They're facing each other, but they're not aware of each other. In that context, would be fucking blind. I feel like there's also an element of understanding, not necessarily just what to say no to, but like snake oil sales. Like, if this is saying this is what you need, is it that the what that you need, or is there a why or a how that is applicable or absolutely obliterates that application and, unearths the truth that this is not wanted or needed, actually, in actuality. The same way, we don't necessarily need likes on anything or like on our social medias. But the whys and the hows are the feeling that stimulates, both physiologically in our hearts and our minds and our nervous system. Okay. Okay. Also, I'm gonna say this. These are kings and queens of the same plane, and I feel like tying back to what the planets are and all of what we talked about, lending itself to this new Venetian time as that moves and meets with Jupiter in the future, I believe early March, which is coming up. That's the side that needs to clearly communicate, rather than take in whatever this king card is sort of feeding. That's the injustice here in this relationship. That's the imbalance here in this relationship. And as far as what with the planets, I feel like that's, again, this is very much that Eros and Mars conversation that is happening now. And this is very much what's going to need to be said when Jupiter meets Venus, or Venus meets Jupiter, and as Mercury goes in line with Venus and Pluto and Mars, I think, or something like that. Whatever I said earlier. Gosh. Okay. Breathe. Four of Wands. Four of Clubs is Wands. That's clearly defined terms. That's definition to what it is that this character wants. That's definition to what it is, where it is that this character is going. That's safety, and beyond definition for this character, and that is safety and knowingness to this character, right? Okay, and protection for this one above all. Not above all, but like in all of them. All of them are above all. But the Four of Clubs is defining that space, defining boundaries, defining the wants, the clarity of communication, defining the wants and the needs based on the whys and the hows. Wants and needs based on the whys. That's your four pillars. That's just what that is, I think. And obviously also lends itself, because force that are visible and repeating and twos and mirroring, that is part of the process of feeding the patterns that we talked about with Saturn and Neptune and everything that I said before. Just rewatch it. I don't remember right now because I'm here. It's small steps. It's digestible space. It's digestible space, which is also what makes it safe space. When we take on too much, or we let too much in, that can slow down the process as well. And that can be, again, where we start to see plateaus rather than seeing the steps ahead of us. So I think this is very much defining those terms, defining those boundaries, defining that space, and sort of setting up like almost like goalposts for yourself, but they're not for you. They're for other. They're not just for you. They are identifiers for other people. They are for you. They are serving you, but they will serve as identifiers or lighthouses or markers for other people. Where maybe you'll find that you won't have trouble communicating because it's already kind of innately communicated in the way that there is presence, which is also this understanding. It's exactly what she presented to me. Damn, okay. There's also a relatability here. I know we had said something about relationships and all of this, feeds community or feeding community ideas, because this will all, ricochet, into Uranus and in Taurus and Neptune and Pisces and these collective ideas, again, into the mirroring. This isn't just with self, but this is reciprocity. A potential for reciprocity in action given these steps. If we can clearly define within this plane, then this becomes the reciprocity bouncing between those two. It becomes its own alternating current, which is how light happens, which is this luminosity, which is also this victory. 9 of Diamonds, when the bells and whistles go off, that means fucking jackpot. That means you win. And maybe as a more hopeful way to stimulate your nervous system and your memory is remembering the ways that you reward yourself and how fulfilling those can be, which again brings me back to make a list of the things that you fucking do to treat yourself and why you do that. And watch how that evolves. Watch how that you start to recognize or understand things about yourself and the things that you actually want. And the things that actually make you joyful or happy or feel appreciated or celebrated, or celebratory in any given moment. But with that, I feel like that's the fucking best way to fucking end it. I wish you self-celebration and life celebration. And even when we are in mourning, holding that honestly ultimately becomes a celebration of life too. Holding yourself with any emotion in that regard begins to become a celebration of you and the incredible capacity with which you can feel and move through this world and let the world move through you. Party on. Happy fucking new moon. Happy day, happy joy. And I hope that life continues to help you define those things so that you can find true honor and celebration in yourself and in the way that you move. Party on. Okay, I'm done. Thank you, bestie, for this awesome deck. I love it. Mwah. Gosh, this feels cheesy, but like, comment, subscribe. Legitimately share with the homies and the enemies, because everybody needs to grow. Because once I get enough subscribers, I can just do this live. You can chime in with me, and I don't have to do it just here. I don't know. Maybe it'll be fun to try it in other places, especially as the weather gets nicer. But yeah, let me know how you feel. Let me know if that resonated. Let me know how you're feeling. But party on. Be safe. Love ya.